Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's recipe, I've got a chicken piccata. It's a really simple recipe that if you're a beginner you can easily make. We start off with chicken breast. We'll go ahead and season them with a little salt and black pepper and a few other seasonings, and then bread them. The dish is fried and then we top it with a lemon or lime and caper sauce. It's kind of up to you what you want to use, if you prefer lemons or limes. So let's get started. So now we're going to get started with our chicken. I like to cut my chicken breast in half. That way, since I'm going to cook this in a pan, you want them to be thin enough so they cook all the way through. So what I do is cut it like this. And don't worry if it's not perfectly even, because we're actually going to pat these down, tenderize them. You want to line your cutting board with either saran wrap or some wax paper. I like to use wax paper over saran wrap only because it absorbs some of that moisture, and then that way your meat is kind of dry once you put it in that meat mixture. Now to each piece of chicken, we're going to use our mallet to tenderize the meat. So I like to use wax paper to do this. You don't have to do it. I'm actually going to do this to all of them, and they should look like this one. This is one that I previously did. It's a lot thinner if you notice, and it cooks up a lot quicker too. All right, so I'm going to start seasoning all of my meat with some salt, sea salt. Be adding a little black pepper. And I like to add some garlic powder. And I like to season all of my meat before I add the flour. That way the flour seals all of the seasonings in. And now I do that with garlic powder. You could season them on both sides, which I'll be doing as well. And I like to add, to give it just a little bit more color, I like to add a little paprika. This is optional. You don't have to do the paprika and chicken bouillon powder, which that's what I'm going to be adding. If you'd like, you could just do a simple salt and black pepper, honestly, but I like a little bit more flavor, so I like to add these two extra. Now we flip these over and we do the same. I'm going to do that to all of them, and then I'll show you the breading part. Now that all of my chicken is coated or seasoned, I'm going to coat it with some flour. And I've got my pan on medium-high with some olive oil, and I'll be adding a tablespoon of butter to that. So when you're frying these, you don't want to crowd them all. I like to fry 2 or 3 at a time depending on the size, because they don't cook up very well if you do that. Now to this hot oil, I'm going to add my butter. And we could start, once the butter is melted, we can start frying. You do just a little at a time. There you go. So because my pieces are pretty big, I'm actually going to fry up 2 at a time. So you fry these up until it builds a nice golden crust. I would give it about 5 minutes per side. And now that the 5 minutes are up, we'll give it 1 turn. The secret to this is just turning it once. You don't want to turn this multiple times. You just want a crust to build, and we'll cook it for another 5 minutes. Now that I've cooked my chicken 5 minutes on both sides, they're ready to be taken out. And remember, they're going to finish off in the lemon butter sauce. The next 2. Every time I cook up my chicken, I like to add just a little bit of oil. Don't drench your meat in oil. So I do a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of butter to give it some flavor. You don't need a whole lot, just a little bit. And you do that for all of your batches. You do a little bit of olive oil and butter each time. So now that my chicken is all cooked up, I keep all these remainings and I actually add just a little bit more flour. We're gonna cook it up, tiny bit, and add more butter to that. Like to keep all those brown bits from the chicken because that's what is going to give our sauce some flavor. And what the flour does is just thicken up the sauce a little bit more. So before we add the chicken broth, we're going to cook this up for a good 3 minutes. Some people will use a white wine along with their chicken broth to make their sauce. I'm not using it tonight, but I know that would be really great with this dish. All right, now we're going to add our low sodium chicken broth. There you go. You could get a no salt chicken broth, that would be even better. I'm going to scrape all those bits. We're going to let this thicken just slightly. Since we added that flour, it'll thicken up just a bit. Starting to see that this is thickening up. It won't be a super thick gravy, but it should be a slightly thick gravy. Depending on how you want it, if you want it even thicker, make sure to mix some flour with a little bit of water and then pour it in here. If you dump the flour in there with the hot liquid, it's just gonna make a lot of clumps. So now that the gravy has come up to a good boil, I'm going to add my lime juice. I like to add lime instead of lemon. And then we're going to add our capers. So I'm gonna rinse those off and add them in. Adding my capers. And you don't want to skip out on the capers. If not, it's not gonna be chicken piccata if you don't have those capers. I'm gonna give this a good stir. Now we can add our chicken. You can kind of let it cook up in there for a little bit more and let all those flavors come together. And I would say just by this time, bringing down the heat to medium-low and kind of letting it simmer for a little bit. And occasionally flipping the pieces so all of them get drenched in that sauce. Now that we've turned down the heat, I'm gonna add my chopped parsley. And I like to do it last minute because I don't like that parsley to overcook, but I do like that hint of herbiness that it gives it to it. And you'll cover this with your lid just so it softens up a bit. And here's the finished product, guys. So I've gone ahead and topped my chicken piccata with a little extra fresh parsley, and I set it on top of some mashed potatoes and some steamed broccoli. I've got a video on how I make my basic mashed potatoes. I want to thank everybody that's watched this video. If you've gotten to this point, I hope you enjoy these recipes that I make, and if so, please subscribe down below. So thanking you all, have a good eats.